Hey there, Water Watchers. Gary Burton here. Today we're going to be talking about the web of life. Now I'm sure some of you have heard of that term, maybe you haven't, but it's very similar to the food chain. In fact, the food chain is a big part of the web of life. However, we have plants, animals, and insects that depend on one another for more than just food. Now, life on Earth would not exist as we know it without the sun. But our main focus today is going to be the water. How everything depends on that water in the web of life. Here we have your typical Montana riparian area. That might be a word that you've never heard before, but it's one of your science words today that you're going to have to remember. The riparian area is the area near the water where the plants, animals, and insects have access to that water. Now it's real easy to tell here in Montana if you're in a riparian area, and I'm going to give you a couple hints. Here we have your typical Montana mountainside, covered in pine and fir trees. Here we have another mountainside covered in pine and fir trees, but as we start moving down, we can see that things start to change. Fall is the perfect time to tell because the colors are changing. Here in Montana, if you see lots of trees with leaves that change color and fall off in the fall, then you know you're near the water. Another view as we're moving down the mountainside. Colors are changing. We now have the trees with leaves. You don't even need to know the names of these. They could be willow, cottonwood. A lot of these aspen have already lost their leaves. We will have the occasional pine tree or fir tree mixed in, especially up in the mountains. But as you noticed before, the mountainside had no deciduous trees, those trees with leaves, just cones and needles, conifer trees. That's the difference. That is the main thing that you want to be looking for here in Montana that will tell you if you're in a riparian area. So again, the riparian area is the area near the water where the plants, animals, and insects have access to that water. Now, riparian areas only make up about 5% of the land, but yet they hold 75% of all living creatures. That's because most creatures, plants, animals, insects, they all need lots of water. They have not adapted to where they can live outside of the riparian areas. So back to our web of life. If 3/4 of all living things live in these riparian areas, it's because of the water. Not just out of the water, but even in the water. Almost all insects will lay their eggs in the water. Those eggs will hatch into a larvae that grows and develops in the creek. Here's another one of your science words: metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is where the insect develops into an adult. The larval stage, like a caterpillar, will grow and develop and eventually turn into the butterfly, the adult version. Well, we have a lot of insects in the creek that undergo this metamorphosis. Those insects mostly feed on plants, the plants being moss and algae in the creek. Some of the bugs are carnivorous, meaning they eat other bugs, but we also have fish. Fish live on these insects. Well, that's part of our web of life, the food chain. What eats the fish? Maybe a bear or or an eagle. All of these things depend on the water for this web of life to take place. Not only are the creatures in the creek dependent on the water, of course, but also many animals outside of the creek. Large mammals depend on this water. They also depend on the plants that grow in this riparian area. Now, the plants also provide more than just food. Photosynthesis, that's another science word that you've probably heard. They take in the carbon dioxide that we breathe out, and they use sunlight and make their own food, and they give off oxygen as a waste product. Just looking around our riparian area, you can see the vast diversity that it provides. Many species, plants, animals, and insects. With all this diversity, you realize how important the water is. If we did not have that water and it wasn't healthy and clean, all of these things in the riparian area would suffer. Here we have a moose carcass. It looks like a calf or a young adult, probably taken down by some sort of predator. Usually the predators look for the sick and weak to prey on. Hard to tell if this one was sick or weak, but obviously all sorts of critters in the food chain have benefited from this kill. So once again, the riparian area is the area where the plants, animals, and insects have access to this water. And the whole web of life depends on this water. If it's not healthy, everything you see here behind me would suffer. So from below the water to above the water, everything in the riparian area depends on that water to be healthy. That's why it is so important that we protect the water. 3/4 of all living things live in these riparian areas. If you take a look at a map and where the towns are located, even people have settled and live in these riparian areas because we also depend on the water.